Hi everyone, this is Julie Uval with Beck Technology. Thanks for joining our webinar today. We're going to actually show our takeoff features within DESTINI Estimator. Michael Boren, he's our Chief Technology Officer here at Beck Technology. He's going to be running the demo. One of the things that Beck Technology does is that we do live demos, so what you're seeing is not a video recording, so that's what we have going on. As the webinar is going on, if you have questions, feel free to use the question box. You can use the chat feature within webinar. So let's get started. Mike, I am going to give you presentation rights.
All right, thank you, Julie. Well, I'd like to start by thanking everybody for attending today. I appreciate your time. We are going to take a super high-level fly-through of our estimator product, talking about quantity takeoff specifically. And the integration with 2D and 3D quantity takeoff. Let me start by sharing my screen. Hopefully everybody can see my screen now. What I'm going to do is I've got a couple different projects loaded up, super high level. These projects are actually housed on an AWS server. One of the things that's really nice about our technology is that it doesn't require you to have everything local, and so all the stuff that you are looking at is actually being housed elsewhere and access to the web, but you can bring it local if you want. Let me just start initially by just showing the 2D. So just like any other 2D quantity takeoff package, we have the ability to load drawings directly into Estimator. You have the ability to create what we call a palette. Other programs might call it a set of conditions or a library, which are just all the different things that you need to quantify or you want to take off. I've taken the liberty prior to coming on just to sketch a handful of things to show you at a high level what that looks like when you're evaluating your drawing and looking at the different quantities you've already taken off, but I will go into what it looks like to actually do takeoff. So here you can see on this particular drawing I've got a handful of 1-hour walls, some standard ceilings, concrete foundations, a wood awning, and some doors. The thing that's really nice about our application is that we do allow you to cut, slice, and dice view data however it is you want to. For example, right now I've just sketched a handful of things, and what I'll do is I'll jump back over to my palette real fast, maybe add some, let's do some finishes. Let's look for some paint. And then maybe we'll just say we got some drywall, so I'm going to paint some ceilings. And then what I'll do here is just say that we're going to paint this ceiling here. So you can see the sketching is really fast, pretty typical for any type of application. You can click and drag and create rectangles. You can sketch different points for areas, lines, you know, whatever it is you need to be able to create and sketch from. Oh, I actually just backed out of that one. Let's sketch that again. All right. You also have the ability to, you know, kind of correct things. If you want to move points, you want to modify anything you've drawn. If you want to apply a different kind of what-if analysis and say, hey, I want to change this from one type to another, I can easily select any other type. Hit apply line item and go, and I can do that wholesale, or I can do that on a single item takeoff. We have count items here, so you can see I've counted my doors. And then one of the things that is really nice is that we have this takeoff summary, which rolls it all up for you and allows you to individually select on these things, which will highlight. You'll see as I select them here, let me zoom out some, you'll see them highlight and select in the drawing. So if I wanted to get all of my doors, I can show that. If I want to show my concrete foundations, you can see that here it's selected. And so it kind of gives you a nice way of interacting with these. One of the things that makes DESTINI Estimator so unique is the ability to quickly tie this to cost, and then it makes that tight integration. So for example here, what I'd like to do is maybe I'll take and select all the doors. So I've got 21 doors here, and I want to tie that to cost. So I'll add that to a line item. What I'll do is go through, select how I want to view the cost items in my database. There is an infinite number of different ways you can do this. However it is you can think about classifying your cost items, you can have that done here. Often we will pre-map, format CSI master format, etc. I can do things like quickly search for doors. I'm just going to pick a single line item here just to show you the mapping. It'll show those items that I've got selected, and I can quickly drag and drop the count, apply any pricing. So if I wanted to just to give it a price, or if there was a price from the database already, I can use that and then go. And now that item is mapped to the cost in this estimate. And where that cut, slice, and dice for 2D really comes in handy is now I can come in and I can organize my, what we call our takeoff summary, by things like what's been mapped to cost. So I'm just going to drag and drop this property, and you can see now that the doors have been mapped versus all of this other stuff that has not been mapped. And we also have the ability, I'm jumping over now to our filter view, to filter both the estimate and the takeoff live based off of based off the properties that you've got selected. So here I'm going to stop filtering or stop creating a filter off the CSI and say, first I want to show it broken down by what it's mapped, and then maybe broken down by master format. Oh, so we don't have a glass format. Let's take that out. Let's do it by CSI. All right, so here you can see the mapped doors and windows, unmapped, I've got moisture protection and finishes. And as I select these, it'll instantly filter, let me zoom in so you can see the count objects, the doors and windows versus the moisture protection, finishes, or just everything that is unmapped in my drawing. So at a high level, where this becomes really nice is these two objects are now tied together. So in my estimate, I'm going to switch over to my estimate view. If I want to see the things that are mapped, it's my doors and windows. If I wanted to see the things that are unmapped, it's all the other items that I've applied in my estimate and haven't tied to the takeoff yet. All right. The great thing is that now my takeoff knows everything about the line items they're connected to. So if I'm asking before, when I filtered on doors and windows, I actually asked my takeoff to filter on doors and windows. It didn't know anything about that property prior to me mapping it. Now it knows everything about the CSI level 1 and level 2. All right, at a high level, that's the 2D quantity takeoff. We have the ability to bring in multi-page PDFs. You have the ability to take advantage of bookmarks, so you can jump back and forth between the different pages. You have the ability to even import into our palette. Matter of fact, this particular palette was created from an OST import. So one of the things that's really nice about our software in general is getting data into this from other systems is very easy. It takes only a couple of seconds. Usually it's done through copy and paste, or in this case, just an import from Excel. And we can bring in massive amounts of data and get you up and running very quickly. What I'd like to do now is switch away, since we have a very limited amount of time, switch away from the 2D for a second and talk a little bit about 3D. So I've got another project open here. I've got a 3D model loaded. This particular model is loaded inside of BIM 360. We also work with Navisworks. But I would like to highlight that it is fluid, it is fast, there aren't any delays and latencies. You can interact with this model in real time. And the thing that's really nice is, like we showed with the 2D, where you were able to break down that 2D, cut, slice, and dice it based off of any properties that's either in the estimate or in 2D, you can do the same thing here. So again, the exact same filter view. If I wanted to say, show me the things on level 1, I could, level 2, 3, 4. You can see that it instantly filters the model. But what's unique with our estimating application is that you can change how you cut, slice, and dice it. So here I've just moved the level 3 up 1, and so now I'm saying, instead of breaking it down by level, let's break it down by, in this case, what was on the level 3, which is component, and then underneath that is level. So here's all my columns, our columns on level 1, columns on level 2, etc., our curtain wall panels, etc. Where 3D becomes really nice is, unlike 2D where I had to sketch everything and apply the properties of the things that I'm sketching beforehand, which is what you would do in setting up those conditions of that palette and saying, hey, this is the color, it's an area takeoff, it's going to be representing carpet. The 3D model already knows all of this information. So here, when I'm selecting the curtain panels, it knows it's curtain panels. If I wanted to put it on level 1, it knows this is all the level 1 curtain panels. So what I can do is I can say, okay, I want to select these. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. So I'll select a panel. Matter of fact, I'll hit Control A and we'll select all of them. Or better yet, maybe what I can do is say I want to select all similar objects. and it'll find all the similar objects with curtain panels, select them, and now I can apply my cost items directly to these curtain panels. And just like we had with 2D, it'll be able to tightly connect every one of those. All right, so what I'll do is I'll add a line item. We'll give it that classification. We'll say let's find some curtain panels. All right. And in this case, I'm going to, since our model components are measured in square feet, I'm going to map the area of these curtain panels. And because this is a new estimate, that will be the only line item in my estimate, but it'll automatically be tied to all of the curtain wall panels in this building. So we'll close that out. We'll jump over to my estimate, and you'll see I've got my line item tied to these curtain wall panels. I also have the ability, like we showed before, of breaking this down in a slightly different way, and I can say, show me all the component parts that are mapped to cost. So I'm now going to recreate my filter view to first be broken down by what's been mapped to cost, and then be broken down by what's not been mapped to cost. So as I expand the map node, you can see the curtain panels are there. Selecting anything else will obviously filter out my estimate, because the estimate, everything in the estimate thus far has been mapped. And if you want to see what that looks like on the takeoff view, I can say, show me only those things that are mapped. Here it's ghosting everything out. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and change the setting just to make it to where it's a little bit easier to see what has and hasn't been removed. There it is. All right. So here, all the things that are unmapped, you can see the curtain panels are missing. All the things that have been mapped are these curtain wall panels. And we can do this for any and all of the objects in this building, and you can do it relatively quickly. So here, I can select an object, I can right-click, select everything similar, map the cost. We'll say this is a precast panel. Let's see. Maybe I'll come in and map some of the columns or some of the floors. This is a count. All right. Now that I've mapped a handful of items to my model, or from my model to my costing, another thing that we really do excel at quite well is the ability to compare what happens when there are changes. And because everything is live linked, you can see the impact on your estimate in real time. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually navigating through, I'm connected to my BIM 360 account model. I'm selecting a different version of that same model. And what Estimator will do is it will compare both models inside of our application, figure out what the impact is going to be on the estimate, calculate that, and show us not only what's been added, modified, and removed, as well as the different particular properties that have been affected, but also its impact on the estimate itself. All right, so you can start to see now it's got the information back. It knows exactly color-coded what's been added, modified, or removed. The ones that obviously will affect us the most are what's been modified and removed. The items that have been added clearly would not have had any cost tied to them yet, but there is something that we do, and I'll show here in a second, that is also unique to Estimator that makes handling additions to new versions of models very easy. And while we're waiting for this to load, I would like to also highlight there are some things that may look very familiar. This does look very familiar and similar to the model comparison inside of BIM 360. But we have gone through the liberty of actually adding a handful of additional pieces of functionality that are not inside of BIM 360. and layered them on top. And one of those pieces that we've added is the ability to filter not only on the components that have been moved where the geometry's changed, or where a particular property has been modified, or where it's the same piece of geometry but it moved from one location to another, but we also gave the ability to filter on the items inside of this model that have cost applied. So you have the ability to say, show me only those things that have cost applied by hitting this filter button here, and you can see now it's showing only those things where the costing has been applied and ghosting everything else out. Consequently, those items also have been modified. So the items that I happen to pick and apply costing all have had some modification done to them. I'm going to turn that filter off, show you what it looks like when we can start to work with this estimate. So here, I've got a handful of items. I've applied some cost to that estimate. I've mapped that quantity from the model to those costs. And now I can start to see the variance when I'm going to upload this model. One of the things that we found is crucial when working with new versions of models is you have to trust what's happening when you get that new version, and you have to be able to understand it. And so one of the things that we didn't want to do is make it to where when I said, hey, upload this new version of the model, it just wipes out the quantities of your old estimate and updates the quantities of the new ones from the model. So what we've got is we're actually having sort of an intermediate phase in this model where we are allowing the estimator to review each one of these changes on a case-by-case basis using both the filter tree. So if they want to use this to break down the model and the estimate, they can. If they want to use this to look at specifically what's been modified and how it's impacting the cost, they can. And then here they can choose whether or not they want to update that quantity based off of the new quantity, or if they want to unhook that quantity. So they can drop this down and say they want to unhook it, or they might want to remove it completely. So it does give you a lot of freedom and flexibility to be able to determine how you want the changes in the model to impact your estimate. Here, let's say that I only have a handful of cost items, but maybe I'm happy with the way everything's done. As soon as I'm fine with the location of everything and how the quantities have been affected, I can hit accept update. It'll take this new version of the model and make it the current version. One of the things that's also very nice in Estimator, but not quite related to quantity takeoff, is we do embrace the ability to version all of our estimates. They all are stored in a database, and so one of the things that will happen as you bring in new versions of your drawings or your models is you can version that estimate, and it will lock it in time, and you can always go back to that version and see the exact model, exact quantities and line items that were a part of that estimate anytime you want. And you can even compare those against each other in the future. At the very highest level, although I haven't gone into much detail, that's the basic idea for quantity takeoff inside of Estimator, is that live link between your estimate and the quantities inside your model, both in 3D and 2D. Our efforts to make sure that the experience when working with 2D, cut, slice, and dice, filter, mapping cost, is the same as the experience in 3D, so your learning curve is very low, and the ability for teams to work together all on the same estimate, both in 2D and 3D at the same time. I'd like to now maybe hand it back to Julie, and we can answer some questions if anybody has any.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Again, if you're on the webinar and you want to ask some questions, please use the question box, and I will ask those to Mike. One of the questions that we do have, and I think you did touch on it, but how is Revit used with Destiny?
So Revit is basically one of the many different formats that can be brought into BIM 360. It's also something that can go directly out to Navisworks. So it is basically handled the same way as any other model format that's supported by those two platforms is handled. The nice thing is that you don't have to know how to handle a Revit model in a particular way, or a Navis model, or IFC. Anything that gets brought into BIM 360 or Navis is going to have that same look and feel. We use a concept called whitelisting. I don't really have the time to go into that now, but the basic idea is it only shows the properties that the estimating team is concerned about, and so it automatically will filter out all of that other stuff, and you'll have a consistent set of properties that you can look at between different jobs and from different model authors to different architects to be able to work with that and not have to do anything special for every single job. It'll look, feel the same every single time.
And I know that you showed us within the 3D takeoff if there's changes to the model. Can you talk a little bit about 2D takeoff if there's changes to a drawing? Is it the same thing of being able to accept or deny changes?
So it does not work quite the same way in 2D because the quantities, the objects are sketched. And so in this case, you're not getting different versions of the same object kind of swapped out from underneath you like you would in a 3D model. You sketch those components. Nobody else is going to come in and adjust that sketch unless they were on your team and inside of the estimate. The way that we handle that is through a slip sheet. So you have your quantities drawn here. If I wanted to, I can say I want to update this page. I would pick update page. I would navigate to where the new documents are, and then I would select that new document. It would update that page out from underneath my existing drawings. And then if there were any changes, I could either select and drag and move these, or I can sketch over the top of them or repaint.
Great. We had a question just come in. You're referring to SiSi Codes and appear to be on SiSi Master Format 1995 edition.
Mm-hmm.
Have you included that 15-year information so that end users can migrate cost codes, or is the software and the organizational logic based on the old 16 division format?
It's any format you want, Omni, CSI, Master Format. All of that information is actually stored in the cost database. So we would typically, our teams would typically work with our potential clients or clients to preload that as we bring the data over. If you've already gone through the effort of coding those items in your existing systems, even if it's Excel, it's as simple as copy and paste, and we've got some technology on our end that enables that copy and paste to instantly populate all of the data. So it could be any number of different classifications, and you can have every single one of them tied to your cost items all at the same time.
And that's a good point to bring up. We do have a seasoned services team. So for our customers that do buy our software, we have a pretty strategic implementation plan put together for our customers, and we help do a lot of the heavy lifting because we know switching estimating platforms is not an easy task. Those are the questions that we have today. So thank you, Mike, for showing us the takeoff. We are going to send out this recording to everyone who registered, so please look for that in your inbox later today. I also want to make note that Mike is going to be back with us April 17th to show a sneak peek of 2019 1.0 Estimator. Mike, do you want to give us a 30-second highlight of that?
Yeah, super high level. It's a complete re-platforming of the application. So I'm actually showing it now. You're actually getting a super early sneak peek because you're actually looking at parts of 2019 1.0 now, but it is taking our file-based system, moving it to a database backend. It's giving us the ability to have historical costing as almost a freebie because all of your estimates now reside in a database. They're searchable across estimates or across versions of estimates. There are a handful of other features that aren't quite as big as the replatforming that are pretty nice, specifically around being able to cut, slice, and dice and view just the estimates that you have available in general. And then we do have a handful of smaller things that are related to self-perform work and core estimating that I'll be showing as well.
Great. And if you're interested in attending that webinar, again, we'll send out the link to that for registration whenever we send out this recording. You can also find it on our calendar page of our website. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and thanks, Mike, for presenting. We'll see everyone next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.